Welcome again to Venture Mechanics and to our Fireside chat for the Summit for Underrepresented Founders. This is number 5 for us. As Ron has said, that this is something that we put on every quarter and just really allows us to get more connected with our founder community and also address some of the things that we see in the founder community. I am honored to be sitting next to a technical giant, and it's always great whenever I get to sit in this chair and talk with these people because they help provide greater insight to what it is to be a founder and also what we as entrepreneurs need to be looking at. Sitting next to me is Mr. Jimmie Lee, a tech prodigy from an early age, began his career by mastering MS-DOS and Windows 3.1 in grade school. Recognized for his, well, everybody said, MS-DOS, Windows 3.1? Recognized for his ability to discern patterns and devise solutions swiftly. His career has been marked by pioneering advancements in cybersecurity, rapid development, cloud modernization, and AI for leading corporations worldwide. Lee possesses a deep understanding of global markets, having spearheaded groundbreaking initiatives in cybersecurity technology for industry giants such as Boeing, Microsoft, and Meta in Brazil, Mexico, and China. This experience has given him a heartfelt appreciation for international cultures and the ability to organize and lead teams in a wide variety of corporate environments. Lee embarked on his entrepreneurial journey beginning with IT in 1994, ignited by the family business and the needs of their partners. In 2020, he founded J. Lee & Associates, grounded on a leadership philosophy that prioritizes people and fosters a culture of innovation and resilience. With a comprehensive skill set spanning software engineering, privacy, and cybersecurity, Jimmie is poised to lead his teams at the forefront of technological evolution. It gives me great honor and pleasure to introduce a fellow overachiever, Jimmie Lee. Jimmie, we've seen each other around and about, and it's funny because you never know who you're actually in the building with, right? I knew you were a heavy hitter, but then to see all of your accomplishments put a lot of things in perspective. And it led me to understand the value of quiet, powerful, and intentional leadership. What have been some of the things that you've encountered as someone who has led global companies?
Thank you for that. First off, thanks for the invitation tonight, Ron and team. And man, that voiceover, I hope they recorded that. That sounded like something to be on a website. It was a lot. I'm still taking it all in. What framework do you want to speak from in terms of encounter? Because obviously I'm an African-American male, greater Seattle area. There's only been challenges that I've encountered, but what time frame do you want to speak from?
Okay, great question. Let's start off there. What are some of the challenges that you had growing up that gave you perspective today? Tell us a little about, how about this? Tell us a little bit about yourself.
All right, so yeah, we prep talk, and you want to kind of frame this. I know we want to spend most of our time on the startup world, but understanding the origin story is key, right? Unlike most people in this room, those that are watching on the live stream and others, is life at some point in time has gotten really real and hasn't been as streamlined or as easy or straightforward or as seamless as one would have liked. Initially, we talked about mastering, but it's really kind of DOS shell. It's like command line based. These kids these days with the graphics and GUIs, it's like we used to have, I'm not even going to get into the cards. But as an early age, they threw me into Montessori early age education. I went there from pre-K to second grade. Thought that I needed a little bit more culture in the Tacoma area. For those of you that know the Tacoma in the 70s and 80s. And my mom just happened to be deputy director of the Urban Age Small Business Incubator. And we get this accelerators and studios, and that's what she did back then. And somebody convinced her I needed more culture, so they threw me in public school. In the middle of the hilltop in Stanley in the 80s. And I got a lot of culture there, but I was too far ahead. And of course, private school to public school, they didn't know what to do with me, so they took me back up to the east side where I lived in Tacoma, put me in a different public school, still didn't know what to do with me. Got so bad that I was starting to go to school with all the work done for the entire day. And then it got to the point that my mom convinced them to let me bring the books home, and I would go to school with all the work done on Monday for the entire week. And back in those days, there weren't a lot of these advanced courses for kids. And so she went to the school district, and the school district said, if you think you can do a better job, do it yourself. From the superintendent from the state, I'm sure it's on camera somewhere. And so she said, okay, I guess I will have to. But there happened to be somebody sitting in a room that were educators, who was a master educator in English and writing, and her husband actually happened to be a math and physics and astronomy professor at Pierce Community College. So there I am in the 5th grade now, being homeschooled and being co-taught. Back in those days, homeschool people worked together. And my math, science, and engineering teacher was an actual electrical engineer that was a part-time professor at Pierce Community College. When my parents heard about these computers, they said, okay, we're just going to buy a computer. They just dropped it in the living room, had no idea what to do with it or how to turn it on. I was this 5th grade kid that wasn't going to school, that was home all day. What do kids do? They got tired of me breaking the TVs and the toasters and everything else. And I sat down and I seriously mastered the OS and the network layer for the computers. Fast forward, college, the professors really didn't know what to do with me. I was working full-time in the family businesses. They had graduated on to nonprofits. We founded a few nonprofits, some are still open today. This was my mom's real estate business. So I was working all day full-time in college, and I wasn't going to courses. And I was like, your syllabus didn't have any contingency on attendance. You just said I had to be here to take the exams or turn in the homework on time, so I did that. So you can't penalize me for not being here. And every phase of life, going to professional life, there's plenty of times when my managers didn't know what to do with me because I was a kid, especially at Boeing. Back in those times, it was work hard enough that they see you working, but don't work too much that they give you more.
Oh, man.
And they got frustrated. Leads always get frustrated with me. I go there and I just get all the work done. I was like, I need more, I need more. Life is going to throw you obstacles. And throughout our time today, I'll highlight aspects of how overcoming obstacles in our day-to-day life is very much like being a startup founder. Each day, something's going to happen you didn't expect, you didn't want, shouldn't have happened, situations or conditions that emerge, and you're going to have to navigate around them. And unlike being an employee, you have infrastructure, or hopefully you have infrastructure. Unless you're a C-suite executive, you still got to go figure it out. But as a founder, sometimes you don't have that infrastructure. So how do you take this same adaptability, the same endurance, and the same resilience and conjure up enough to overcome these challenges that you face every day? And life and being a founder is not that much different.
That's interesting because it makes me think of right place, right time. And we usually think about that in terms of things that go well for us. And what about in the times where it doesn't necessarily go well for us? You happen to be at the right time. There was a problem, and you being at the right place at the right time, you end up finding these educators that end up becoming your professors, who were actual professors. Then to move on, and now you're faced with the situation where I can relate to breaking TVs and things like that. My dad, I was banned out of the garage because I would take things apart and couldn't put them back together. But the fact that, hey, instead of we have to do something with you, right? From your parents of, hey, we have somebody that is bright, that is smart, and we need to keep him engaged. To see how that arc has continually happened to you throughout your career of not just being at the right place at the right time, but always finding out how to figure it out as a result. When you say with founders that trying to figure it out, what does failure look like in that kind of context of trying to figure things out? What does failure look like? Is failure an opportunity, or is failure feedback?
So can I take a slight deviation into my opinion based on founder and no founder, launch or don't launch, if that's okay? I have the privilege of mentoring a lot of people. In my role at Meta, I was hired to ideally just make security better. And my manager just got called, I think Obama was in the White House then, if I'm not mistaken, and he got called to be deputy director of the IT for the White House. And so my first day after moving from Seattle to Menlo Park, going into the office, was a walk around campus telling him that it was great to meet you, but it's the last day you're gonna see me for a while because I'm gonna go move to DC and you're gonna work with somebody else, right? Life throws you curveballs. And I say this to say that in my role at Meta, it evolved over the years, but it got to the point that I had a big amount of money to work with. It wasn't just because I asked for $100 million and I got it. No, I typically got half of that. But I got really good at working with corporate funding, really good. And when the trust and respect of the finance and the legal department, and worked my way through building trust and building relationships to the point that when my peers couldn't spend, I could. So I had strategies and roadmaps of years forward to bring them years back, but that put me in a position to look at about 1,000 startups a year. It's not unheard of. I'd hire about 100 of them, and I'd go deep on about 40 of them. I had a 95% win rate. And that win rate wasn't just because I picked good founders, it's because I had a team of 200 people to make sure that those startups were successful. In a corporate world, as a corporate funder, we need every company viable and producing for at least 3 years. After 3 years, technology changes, things shift, we're moving on to something different. But it gave me exposure, unprecedented exposure, to startups worldwide. And I'd often see in the first 10 minutes of the meeting, a person that was trying to build a company as a founder that was probably in the wrong spot and a bad match for what their career was what they intended for it to be. And so I'd often mentor and meet founders and funders and executives daily throughout every week. And oftentimes the first thing that I ask one of the founders, especially early stage, is why are you a founder? Why a startup? Why now? I often find I spend more time mentoring and coaching people as I call myself an advisor, because a mentor kind of means like I'm going to stick with you if you don't listen after a period of time. But I'm not a studio and I'm not an accelerator. If you stop listening, this is a bad match. It doesn't mean that I'm the best person for you and I know wrong, it's just not a good match. I call myself an advisor. But as an advisor, I often spend most of my time helping people understand who they are as an individual. One of the best things that happened to me recently was I hired a brand person to give me advice as a writer, but who was a clinical psychologist. And one of the things he started to ask me was, who are you outside of your labels? Who are you outside of these boxes you found yourself in and you put yourself in, other people put you in? Who are you? And so when I start to look at founders and start to ask, okay, these obstacles that they need to overcome, the first one you need to overcome is why you, because doing a startup and being a founder is the worst financial investment and path ever. And for those who really need to hear it and need to understand it, is starting a company takes money. It's always better to start it with your own money and have some control or influence than just to expect that you can raise other monies outside of your own. Because what starts to happen is you have this idea, but the idea isn't valuable. It's the application of that idea in a business that can continually gain traction that brings about value. So when you talk about overcoming obstacles, I think the biggest thing that people need to understand and ask themselves about when they want to be a founder or create a company is why you, why now, why this? Is this your best fit?
That's interesting because you're having that perspective of being a corporate funder, and you said that you were investing in or buying startups, or
so there's all kind of ways. That would be a whole session. But there's all kind of ways to frame it. But the way that I would typically work was I would purchase services from that company. But a lot of times the checks that I were writing were greater than any single VC would typically write, and that's sometimes in the millions. And so I would overtake their roadmap and strategy to build the products and services that I needed for me internally, because a lot of the stuff that I worked with was skunkworks. It was, I operated functionally as a shadow org, and I built products and services that were not supposed to be communicated outside the company for reasons that might go public or reasons that wouldn't go public for specific privacy or security or governance, purposes. And from that perspective, it would be understanding what that core purpose was and the application of it. But I wouldn't, and then in some cases, I never did a proper M&A because of all the stuff that comes with M&As. And so I do weird scenarios where I would go in and buy all the intellectual property from the company, and the company would dissolve on its own. And so and then I also have different companies do JVs with each other because they're better together, and then independent. And so I did a lot of this kind of maneuvering around, and I had an army of lawyers, right? And it didn't cost me anything. And so we always found a way of getting it done without bringing publicity around it.
That's real interesting because he who has the goal makes the rules, and it seems as if the simple fact of you, oftentimes I would imagine that you're probably their biggest customer.
Yes.
And so by being their biggest customer now, really that gave you a level of power and influence on their direction. So what would be some of the things that what would be some of the advice that you would give to founders that are looking to maybe do business with a large enterprise, and maybe not doing business with a large enterprise would be the way to go? What would be some of the advice that you would give to founders?
Yeah, so it really depends on the product and application, industry, and region of the world that they really want to operate in. I think there's a lot of different differentiation there, but the core commonality, the common denominator across the board starts that conversation around what is your real product? Is it a product? Is it a service? What solution are you providing? And one of the best ways, let's take the enterprise scenario, one of the best ways to get into enterprises is build something they need faster than they can at a cheaper price than they can maintain it. They'll almost do it every single time. What do they need? What can you provide? How simple and cost effective can you make it? And how easy is it to integrate into their technology stack? Well, a lot of people would come to me at Meta when I was at Meta, and they would, I faced them with Meta, and they'd say, hey, we built it in the cloud. It was like, it's cute, it's cool, it's great. Doesn't apply to me. Why? Dude, we're our own cloud. We technically need it on-prem, or what we call private cloud now, and they'd have to re-architect the entire solution. But their intellectual property or their algorithms, their approach, their repeatable processes, their ability to get from A to B in a seamless way, in a repetitive way that they can maintain and build over time, brought me a solution that I couldn't build in the same amount of time as it would take me to get them to re-architect and utilize their technology, their solution. And so it saved me money as a corporation because I didn't have to hire a whole team, specific, very siloed skills, because now I got to go and battle it out and debate it out with HR and talk to the talent folks about why I need to bring in a skill set that the company doesn't even have. And then they're going to say, what about the career path for that individual? They have to have ability, something to look forward to. How are they going to go up the ranks? Is there a managerial position ever for that role? Okay, if there's not, where are they going to cap out? And how are we going to offer them continual education, right? And so when you're looking at enterprises, these are the big problems that they're trying to face. So as a startup and as a founder, how can you provide a solution to them that alleviates all of that and delivers to them core intellectual property that enables them to solve their solutions very easily? Now, when you start moving down that stack from enterprises to middle market to other startups and small businesses, those problems and those situations shift and those change. So for middle market, the biggest question is, okay, so what does your customer need the most? How much of it do they need? What's your TAM? What's your addressable market? All of those questions come up, but the biggest question that you got to face is how are you going to continue to source new business? Enterprises are a little bit easier because once you get into one really big one and you have a really good success story, executives talk. So if you can get to the right conference, the right mentor, the right advisor, the right investor, to see the right conversation in the right room, it'll go around. I used to go to shows, and I used to never go to the floor. And I'll just hang out in the hotel lobbies in Vegas. Most of the big shows are in Vegas. I don't like to call it old school because it just starts with old. And so I'm trying to start this whole thing foundational, the foundational way we used to do it, right? But those that are the foundationalists, the old schoolers, right? They know whenever you go to RSA or any of those shows, none of the real conversations are ever happening anywhere close to the show floor. It's not even in the stands. It's in the hotel lobbies where executives are way over drinking and way under eating, and $1 million decisions are being made right then and right there. And I'd have either my employees or other younger employees that would go with me, and I'd have them go and just disperse throughout the shows and go through all the different places, and I'd hang out where the decisions are being made. And so as you start looking at the founder, how can you get your company, your product, your service, your profile spoken in these rooms? Because an executive talking to another executive that appears in the same fortune category of business is generally going to trust that person a hell of a lot more than anyone else who's trying to pitch your product, your service, or your company. And so the biggest thing that we're talking about now is brand and brand awareness. As a founder, one of the best advices that I can give to you, specifically those not going for enterprise, is start building your brand now. The time you need your brand is far too late. You need to give people something to reference other people to about you, your product, and your service. So these websites, these pitch decks that I'm sure Ron has been harping on people about, continue to refine your elevator pitch, continue to refine your written communications, posting about it, writing news articles about it, getting your voice out there is critical. Because specifically for underrepresented founders, specifically with this administration, we have another hurdle to overcome.
That's, oof, you just dropped gems on us. You said the real conversation are in the hotel lobbies. Over the past few years, my wife has really pushed me to go to more conferences. And now seeing exactly what you're saying about, it's not, those conversations aren't happening in the actual conference, is happening everywhere else where everybody else feels in this more relaxed environment. But the fact of a lot of times founders are asking, how do I even get that conversation? How do I even get to find out who these people are? How do I even get in front of someone like yourself that is able to make those decisions? So I thank you for providing that to our audience. You said something that was interesting. You say old school, but I would like to think that there's maybe some generational differences between startup culture, maybe in the 80s, 90s, and maybe even some of the 2000s, and startup culture today. What are some of those differences that you're seeing with startup culture?
Yeah, it's generational, right? I was somewhere last week, and we were reminiscing. No, it was actually Sunday. We went to this Lego event in Chicago. And I was talking to a group of people, and the game was on, right? I forget who was playing, but it wasn't the Chiefs. It was another game was on at the time. And I was like, man, let's go. And I yelled out the score, and I was like, oh, sorry, I didn't know if you wanted to know the score or not. And I was like, oh, I forgot, man, it's 2025, right? There's no way to not know it. That was back in the days, I was reminiscing about VHSs, where you set the timer, and you'd hope your kid didn't reset the timer so that they try to record their cartoon, because you can only do one thing at a time. We didn't have all these DVRs and YouTube TV where 5 things could be recorded at the exact same time under 5 for profiles. Guilty. Right?
Guilty.
There's only one of them. And so back in those days, it's like talking about how things have changed. I think right now there's a low barrier to entry for being a business owner and a startup founder, and I think there's some good and there's some pros and cons with that. I think a lot of times one of the biggest differences that I talk about, and I think we spoke about this too, is, and I know I'm going to get some looks, I know I'm going to get some daring eyes, I know I'm going to get some debates, and I love debates, so we'll debate on the breaks or we'll debate at the after party. But I believe that LinkedIn is Hollywood. And I don't think a lot of people understand that. It's literally Hollywood playing with monopoly money. And people don't get it, and for whatever reason, I hate Reddit and I hate its algorithm, because if you look one thing up once, it continues to send you the same information over and over again that you never asked for. And one of those things happened to be early startup founders that said, yeah, I got scammed out of another $10,000 from somebody who promised to give me a product on whatever, and then somebody else will chime in, it's like, yeah, bro, I'm sorry about that. That was basically a Wix template you could have bought for $10, so, but you got to do better. But people see these LinkedIn articles and they don't really realize it's like driving through LA, where people are driving these super nice cars that cost $300,000, and they go to a home that's barely put together. together, right? They got a couple of strong outfits, but they're trying to fake it till they make it. And there's this generation that's grown up with so much information and so much access to information, and now they have AI that can make it sound like it's semi-professional, and they put this out there, and they're just great marketers. Now, more power to them. It's better than carrying out trash cans and raking leaves. I get it. But it's really just about marketing, and it's this game of who got there first with certain executives and certain roles. And you're just like, oh, come on, I hope people really see this, but a lot of people don't know it's Hollywood.
I think that's frustrating. And I think a lot of people in this room could probably attest to that. Is I have a superior product. I have a superior service, and I'm getting beat out by somebody who ran Facebook ads. I'm getting beat out by somebody that invested more in the production quality of their content than they actually did in their actual product and service. So how do you, as a founder, how do you strike that balance?
So
in Hollywood.
Great statement, but I want to make a super strong clarification here, specifically for those that are on live stream and those that may not know. A superior product or service does not make a company. Say that one more time. A superior product or service, or an executive who is an exceptional subject matter expert, does not make a good product or company or a good leader of a new company. And that's okay. So how do you get ahead of it? It really goes down to the work you do on the inside manifests on the outside. How do we combat imposter syndrome? How do we combat these barriers or overcome? For the underrepresented founders and those that do not consider themselves in the pronouns of he or him, specifically with the latest stuff's going on, right? There's 3, 4, 5, 6 obstacles you have to overcome. My wife's a senior executive in a local company here in Washington State, and chief and in all of these groups. And there's no words to capture what it takes to overcome these challenges as a she or her or they or them. And there's few spaces for you to come and feel safe and get the kind of advice or just decide to get. I was standing next to somebody the other day, and I just sighed, and they sighed, and we just looked at each other, and we immediately knew we get it. It's like when you walk into a new job or a new space and you see somebody who you might identify with, and you just get that look or that nod. They get that look and that nod, and you're just like, oh, okay, not the only one. And I really say you really have to understand your why, right? And you really have to understand that every good product or service doesn't make a good company. And how do you find what's true? How do you find what's factual? How do you find what's valuable? How do you find what's authentic? What's going to truly make an impact? It's community. We have to realize, and I don't want to use this platform to sound like a previous life of what I used to do from a spiritual perspective, but we have to remember, and for those of us that have been around for a while, things happen in cycles. And I'm talking to a lot of folks who are trying to make a lot of sense out of what's going on right now. And like I said, listen, we've seen stuff like this before. But now we're more informed. We have more information, more access than we ever had before. And so building the right community around you. Right now, everybody's going to be accepted into the catapult or accelerator or a studio. So what's your next best thing? Finding somebody else who may not have gotten in and convincing a mentor or an advisor to take you on. I have mentors and advisors who never asked me if they could be my mentor advisor. In fact, I have mentors and advisors who I'm sure told me no 3 or 4 times. But I'll be damned if I be turned away if you got something that I need in order to help myself get forward, because you got to understand, like, I'm climbing this ladder. I might be on rung 10 out of rung 20, and I may have 10 more rungs to go on this ladder. But I've sure gone from 0 to 10. And I got some people who haven't ever been exposed to what it takes to get from rung 0 to rung 1. And so what drives me is not my own success, but it's creating an opportunity and paving a way and creating a repeatable process for others to come behind to also get that success, right? I'm after legacy while a lot of other people are struggling with the beginning. And so it's my job, now that I'm focused on legacy, to help others start from 0 to 1.
It seems like you're very passionate about creating that legacy and giving back. Where does that come from? Does that come from your experiences climbing the corporate ladder? Does that come from your experiences of early childhood? Where does that come from?
From a lot of meditation and prayer, to be honest, right? It's really asking myself that question, why am I here? And what am I here to do? And I think when you can connect that with being a founder, nothing can stop you. And so my life has gone through, consistently, I didn't really have a choice. My mom was a small business owner, and that's just how I grew up, right? And back in those times, we're talking late 80s, early 90s, right? The course and the progress of women's advancement wasn't even as far as it is now 30 years later, right? I watched and saw how women business owners, small business owners used to have to work with each other, primarily because of the gender dynamics and the unequalized access and the unfair treatment and the far sparse programs that were made for them. They're not going to fail. They're not going to give up. So they started working with each other and giving business to each other to lift each other up. And they started to build communities of each other. And that's how they started to create a movement and start to inspire and continue to move things forward. And so how do you overcome? I didn't have a choice, right? My father's a Vietnam veteran, right, who got to college through Ford Foundation, and thankfully he was out of the military a few years before I was born and transitioned into civilian life. But I'm a military kid. Like, all my uncles were military, all my cousins were military. That mindset of adapt and overcome was everything. Oh, Dad, can you help me come in and lift this 2-man rock outside because it's heavy? Son, adapt and overcome. My uncles, we got to move these railroad ties. Okay, great. You pick it up 2 at a time. Okay, I got 1. Nope, you need 2. Move faster. Adapt and overcome. My mom was relentless as just because of what it took to be a founder even in those days. Everything's a founder now. Small business, startup, founder. But I didn't have a choice. It was ingrained in me that you are who you're going to be, and don't let nothing stop you. Don't let your environment condition you to force yourself to think or operate within the confinements of what somebody else said who you should be or what you should be able to do. And a lot of us come from that same background. As I look out and be honest, I know every single one of us, if we stopped and gave 30 seconds to talk about a challenge they had to overcome, a challenge their families had to overcome, whether they be migrants or immigrants or transients from different state to different state or country to country, all of us have an origin story. But we often forget about the history and all that we've been through and all that we've overcome to just get our careers to this point. And the weight of the moment overtakes you. Forces you to lose sleep, to stress, to break relationships. But the greatest ability to overcome is your remembrance of how far you've already overcome, how far your family overcame, how far your ancestors overcame, how far society has transitioned into where it is now. Your fuel is not necessarily in front of you. Your strongest, best burning fuel has already been behind you, but you just have to remember that in your moment.
That's rocket fuel. That's rocket fuel. That's rocket fuel. I gotta shout out my wife again. My wife was, in my journey, I realized I accomplished a lot of things, right? But as you go through these challenges, you often forget what you have overcome. And particularly as founders, we face challenges on a daily basis. It seems like we're fighting for our lives on a daily, sometimes hourly, sometimes by minute basis. What would you suggest for founders to do to remind themselves of the things that they've overcome. To give themselves that rocket fuel to keep pushing, in spite of the fear, in spite of how insurmountable things seem.
So the first thing is recognize patterns sooner. If you're doing the same thing and it's not working, do something different. What? Anything but that or the previous things you've already done, right? One of the things that I've been trying to practice, and this is just me using the stage of beta test different ideas, it's great for that, right? But is this concept of 1% better. I think a lot of times as a founder, you're looking at that next deliverable, that next accomplishment, that next deadline, that next funding goal, and you sometimes lose track of day to day. And so find a way of basic project management to write down what am I going to do this next day, but maybe even keep a journal or just a thought journal or a gratitude journal of what you've accomplished day by day, right? But if you can imagine doing 1% better, and so I try to divide life into different segments, it's way better for stress management. If you try to figure out how to be great with your physical health, your exercise, your eating, be a great father, be a great husband, be a great daughter, son, it's too much. They talk about the 5 things, like pick 1 or pick 3 or pick 4 or whatever the number is, but some of us, you got to keep all 5 plates spinning. Yeah. And so how can I do 1% better every day? But if you think about doing 1% better every day, that's 365 days in a year. That's somewhere roughly around 80% in a quarter. Can you imagine doing 80% better than you were in 90 days? And the next 90 days doing better. And the next 90 days doing better. Don't try to boil the ocean. So that's why, I don't know why I seem to be a commercial for the catapult, right? But that's why just having an audience like this in Mental Mechanics, whether you be in the Founders and Funders groups or in something like Catapult, this is where studios and this is where accelerators may help you, right? Help you map out, these are the areas you need to do better in 90 days. Just try to do 1% better every day and do not accept failure from yourself for that 1%. But I have news for you, that 1% is actually really easy. But you gotta break down your day and you have to break it into segments and you have to identify your goal. So how do you conjure up that strength to overcome? Is by making the bite sizes smaller and witnessing your accomplishments day by day.
Absolutely, absolutely. I'm gonna open it up to the audience. Does the audience have any questions?
Can I just add some commentary on that? A couple of things that you said really resonate with me. I often tell people business is a process of continuous improvement. Same thing, 1%. You only need to figure out 1% today, 1% tomorrow. This does get overwhelming. How are we going to get there? So that's a beautiful analogy that you used. And I also found as a founder, I have to keep my team going sometimes when it looks insurmountable. We're going to launch this new website in 30 days. Like, oh my God. And that's when I remind them, look at how much we've already done. It's so easy to lose focus. Just go back and look at the old versions of your business plan. Just how much your thinking has evolved, how much your team has evolved. Right, so I think those are extremely true words. They really resonate with me as a 40-year entrepreneur. I love listening to both of you guys talk because it's common wisdom. Anyway, that's all I wanted to say. It's just that really resonates.
Thank you. Anyone else?
So this is one of those rare times, safe spaces, you can actually ask a question that you're facing right now. It could be business, growth, sales, marketing, product, engineering, tech stack. This is an opportunity, and this is why we're here.
Jimmie, as somebody who's worked in the corporate world for so long, can you give any piece of advice to startups who are encountering a big corporate, either as raising funds or as looking for a customer or a strategic partner? What pieces of advice would you give those startups?
Okay.
Look over here and pass the same question.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
That was my bad.
I'm not going to remember the exact same phrasing.
It's close enough.
What pieces of advice would you give to startups who are encountering a big corporate when they're raising funds, when they're looking for a customer, or when they're looking for a strategic partner?
So how far along is the startup?
Maybe you're probably going to come across a lot of early stage startups here in Western Washington and Washington State in general. So I'd say, let's say a pre-seed to seed company versus even a Series A company.
So my definition of pre-seed is you probably have at least some repeatable traction. You've got some product validation, you've got a little bit of ICP, product market fit, you've got some of that kind of worked out. When you start to say pre-seed going to enterprises, if you don't go. Because the enterprises are, you either have to be solving a very specific niche problem that they have, or you need to show them that there's something to actually sell. And so the biggest difference between going to an enterprise company and a small, medium business or an investor is you can have a great idea, something you worked around, a little bit of customer discovery, and okay, great, that's great for an angel, right? That might be great for a studio or great for an accelerator. But enterprises are always, I don't want to say, inwardly focused. They already have a mission, they already have a vision, it's clear, it's set from the top, and it's pushed down. And there's very little leeway to move it in. And so if you're going to approach an enterprise, you need to be solving a problem that they have, and you've done some sort of discovery. Talk to someone, somebody's not necessarily leaked something, but they've given you enough to be able to go in with a proposal on how you're going to solve that problem, and something to show in terms of a demo product, even if it's rough, that it's real, that you've gone through the tough thinking, and that you have the right kind of team to go and solve that.
They didn't leak it, they just happened to have a conversation over a steak and an old fashioned.
Or they happen to be at that hotel bar and you caught them on drink number 7.
Absolutely. Any more questions? Please. Javier.
Yeah, any advice on finding investors or angel investors that want to invest in impact? Mission-focused companies and mission-focused startups, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, great question. So as funny as I was doing my networking last year, about 40% of the funders and investors I came across were actually looking for impact funds. Now, sometimes I'm not a finance guy by trade, so I'm not going to tell you these numbers are law, facts. Google it, you might find something different, but I think that a lot of the impact-focused stuff sometimes might flow with the current U.S. administration. We were talking about U.S. specifically, and so you have to consider that. But a lot of them are looking for that longer-term, big-picture thinking, legacy-forward deal. But practically speaking, how are you going to make some kind of headway in the near-term future, right? And what is that impact? If it's agro-tech, if it's some of those other hard tech spaces, it's really hard to prove you've made impact for a long duration of time. So you're not looking for an angel or a pre-seed or seed funder who's looking for evidence. You're looking for somebody who's looking for that longer impact. If you can do enough work to figure out from that impact fund who's backing them, you might find a family office, and different family offices have different focuses, and a lot of people don't know this, but a lot of it's on their websites. And so if you can figure out who they're giving funds into and what investor you're talking to and where they may have gotten their investment funds from, you can map that back generally to sometimes a family office or a larger fund that has a specific thesis that they're after. And then you want to map your pitch and your approach to that funder who's after that specific thesis for your impact. And they might be a little bit more amenable on evidence up front and look more at the team, the founder. But I always tell people when they're coming to raise funds and looking for investors, like, we're really investing in the founder first. Because at the pre-seed stage, sometimes at the seed stage, there's not really enough there to give us that, okay, for sure this is going to make it. So is this person and this team going to have the endurance to stick it out, to make sure that this is successful? And now the next thing is your focus, your thesis, your strategy, your vision on something that really aligns with them. And are they maxed out on the funds that they're raising for? Like, there's so much online that if you go deep enough, you can really uncover what's on their plate and why they're there. And if you've done that research before you get in front of them, you have the most likely success of getting that second or third meeting.
I'd like to add, there's two kinds of impact investing. You're going to have an impact on the climate, You're going to have some kind of social good, redeeming value. That's one kind of investor. There's also having impact by we are funding Black founders, for example. So that latter category has changed significantly. Usually, most of the VCs we've had up on this stage, especially the emerging funds, Jonathan's in here somewhere, a few $1 million fund, right? They're all going to say in their PowerPoints to their LPs, we look for diverse founders. They're not an impact. If anything, they're saying that differentiates us because we're going to have higher ROIs on our exits. So in every category, LGBT, you name it, any category, the statistics are out. This is the group that now has the most grit, no plan B, first in their family to go to college, first in their family to build a company, first in their family, raise venture capital. Everything's on the line. They're so much more motivated, and the results, financial results, speak for themselves. So they actually shirk away from being called impact funds just because they are investing in particular diversity groups, men's funds. It took generally 2 to 3x higher ROI on exits currently. So they don't want to be called impact funds. An impact fund is, we're giving money away, basically. The Home Planet Fund for Patagonia, Carlos writing checks to community. The ROI they're looking for is how many gallons of clean water generate, not how many dollars did you return to us. So I think you really want to be very clear. There are clearly impact funds that are like climate tech, but I think they try to move away from that term impact these days because that implies you're not looking for a financial ROI. And if that's what you are, you're Patagonia's fund, right? You're not looking for a financial ROI.
Well, we're going to take these last 2 questions and we're going to do it as a twofer. Please.
Hello. Hi. My name is Marina. So my question will be about the market fit. What would be the best strategy advice on market fit exploration, specifically for B2B solutions in the healthcare field, digital healthcare solutions, and any advice on how to conduct the best customer interview, like specifically how to target their pain points that they're not aware about that exist, but they're not pronouncing that. So yeah.
All right.
Just want to make sure that we let you know that Angie is here, who's one of the 2 mentors who teaches our customer discovery workshop, and that's the best place to go for a 3-hour answer, not a 30-second answer that we can hear, but we spend more time with founders on that than anything else.
And those workshops are great. I've attended almost all of them. Great workshops. Please, Joe.
My question is, as a founder that has already found product market fit, that has already secured a lot of different things, is generating revenue, what would be the best advice for me? Because I'm a pretty outspoken person, but I am very reserved when it comes to cold calling or cold emailing anybody, investors. Do you have any advice on that? Because to me, whenever I do it, I just feel, it's very awkward for me. So I stay away from it. Do you have any advice on just how to break ice easier through cold emailing or cold calling either potential investors or potential executive members? Because I have a small team of 3 and I need to expand, and just trying to figure out how I can find people that I guess are qualified, but also I don't know them at all.
So let me see if I could alchemize these questions together. So in order to even get to the point of having product market fit and doing the exploration, it seems as if you have to get over that sting of rejection. So what can founders do that will set them up for success so that they can get over the sting of rejection, as well as get the market fit that they identify the market fit that they have and ask the right questions when they get that?
Again, Angie's class goes into this specifically, and she's going to be the moderator for the next panel, so maybe you can take a couple minutes up front and say a few words about that. It's a common issue for founders.
Yeah, I'm probably during the break. I don't want to break down people's food time, and some people have kids and things to get back to for tomorrow, so I know that maybe cut out. But in short, product market fit is really about market's acceptance of what you're offering. And the best undeniable acceptance is paying users and getting commitments to pay. I think Angie's going to go into a lot more detail into that regard, but I think going into the other question about cold calling, I can give you the in love answer or I can be candid. You got to get over it. Like, you got to understand that you're going to get no's. I think I saw somebody make a funny LinkedIn post today, 1,000 calls to 2 prospects to maybe 1 deal. And so AI is a great use case. So for me, I'm an introvert and I do not like to boast. Like, I'm just not the best seller of me.
Yeah.
But my company is me. And I think that AI is amazing because it has no emotional caliber or quotient whatsoever. And you just go in and give Gemini enough cues to make me sound like I am confident and very authoritative and speak very deeply directly to this person in this title in this area of the country and only do it in 500 words. And I think that utilizing some of the advanced AI tools out there can help you get more, but I would say your biggest question is going to be is what audience should you be in? And it's going to be more about brand. It's going to be about brand awareness, having brand assets, and I can talk to you more later about cascading that brand out there and utilizing AI and automation. But you have to be careful because authenticity and trust is the biggest thing on the market right now. And PR and marketing teams will tell you trust is everything. So don't overuse AI that's going to put your brand, trust, or authenticity at risk because once you lose that, you might as well close shop and create another company under a different name.